Hi friends! If you want to check out my current roundup of concealers, ones that I've purchased in the last 6 months, and ones that I haven't used in a long time, and just sharing my general thoughts about all of them, well then please, just keep on watching. Hi, my name is Alicia. If it's your first time here, thank you so much for clicking on my video. And if you are returning, well thank you for visiting me again. Kinky Sweat stands for my kinky hair and sweat life. I'm a fitness professional who loves things, all movement and beauty. If you want to check out what I do in between the makeups, you can head over to my Instagram. Many of you had asked that I do a concealer ranking video. First and foremost, a shout out to Kelsee Briana Jai. She is the one who started ranking videos, and I wanted to give her the proper credit. And she recently did a foundation video where she ranked all the foundations she had reviewed, worn, tried in 2019, and I believe there was a concealer video before that she did last year ranking all her concealers she also tried that year. So shout out to Kelsee for putting in all the work and just being fabulous at those ranking videos and all ranking videos that she does. I'm terrible at them. Although ranking videos might better guide your decision in terms of what product to get that's featured on that particular ranking video, in the end though, whatever I rank as one might be your number never. And I thought, okay, well, let me talk about all the concealers that I've tried, present the information in regards to the finish, the texture, the tone, the this and the that, and perhaps you can decide from there. Because quite frankly, friends, like I said, I'm terrible at ranking videos and it just makes me stressed out. So I'll talk about all the concealers that I bought in the last 6 months, compare them here in this video, maybe do demos while we speak about them. Is that going to be helpful too? I don't know. With all that said, let's just get in a little closer. That's enough. Right now, I just have my Good Molecules No Silicone Primer Moisturizer on. I am going to take this off because I want you guys to see the skin. I don't want any distractions. I have to start this video with Forgotten Loves, where I had to take a moment and remember, friends, what did I use before the Giorgio Armani Power Fabric? And I was like, I don't know. And then I started digging around the drawers, and this is what I found. Remember this? The NARS. Remember this? The Laura Mercier. And one that we want to forget, the Too Faced. In addition to the Fenty Beauty concealers, which for the life of me, I don't know where they are. They're probably hiding somewhere, laughing at me. These are the concealers that I use extensively, and might I add, I think when I first started getting into makeup, filming myself for YouTube, I was using the NARS quite a bit. This is in the shade medium to ginger, and if you guys can remember, maybe you're still using this concealer. It's a sophisticated formula, very lightweight. And I think at that time when this first released, this was like the top selling concealer in the industry. And then the Laura Mercier, I don't feel this was spoken about a ton. It wasn't as popular, I feel like, the NARS, or maybe it was, and I just missed that whole thing. The Flawless Fusion Ultra Long Wear Concealer. I wore the shade 3W under my eyes. I thought this was a great shade. A little bit of coverage, a little bit of brightening. I would actually compare these two to be very close. Perhaps the Laura Mercier was a little more fluid in texture, and the NARS had a little bit of more creaminess to the texture. And then of course we got the Too Faced, that at the time when we weren't too mad at them yet, but I think we were still, they're always doing something dumb. Okay, I used the shade Sand, and I think that was like the new Tarte Shape Tape. And come to think of it, actually, after the NARS, I used the Tarte Shape Tape for quite some time. That was the beauty influencer concealer of choice. Across the board, you had to wear that concealer. You didn't have to, but people felt inclined to because the coverage was amazing, but it still looked like your skin. But I had an old Tarte Shape Tape when I was cleaning out my drawers, maybe sometime last year. I couldn't believe I wore that concealer. It was so high coverage and just so much makeup. I applied way too much. And it had fragrance, which is a huge no. Definitely will never go back to that concealer, but I would go back to the Laura or the NARS. Those are reliable concealers, I think, for anyone to use, and I feel anyone can be successful with in terms of finding that beautiful coverage that's going to have a nice range of skin tones to offer. But again, the formula is exquisite. So now we fast forward to Giorgio Armani Power Fabric concealer. The assumption was based on the title Power Fabric that it will be more on the matte side. It will be maybe drying to those skin types, when actually this is quite a lovely concealer. Was then and still is for me today. I have the shade number 6, and if I were to quickly nudge this somewhere on the coverage spectrum, I would say this is a medium coverage concealer. I would say that the Pat McGrath concealer is more than this. The Hourglass offers up more coverage than this. Maybe the Dior a little more. Why don't you come in a little closer still? Let's put this on. Also, what had changed with my application is I just don't apply a whole lot anymore. I used to sweep so much concealer on. Now I just nudge it where I need it to go. And the texture of this concealer is just ultra lightweight. It's very fluid. It applies easy, and it also blends easily as well. I'm taking one of my Pat Shine Duo brushes and we'll punch that in. And what I like also is how post-blending, the finish is just so skin-like. And despite the Power Fabric claims, I feel, on me anyway, I consider myself to be a normal skin type. I feel it's not a drying finish. It's very lightweight, and the coverage is simple, it's effective. And if anything, you could always just use your finger, and I feel one of the best tools when applying concealer. And yeah, that Power Fabric, I think, is a standout favorite. It's easy to use, it blends easily. It's just one of those concealers that offers up the right amount of medium coverage without looking heavy under the eyes. Because usually if you do undergo dry skin under the eyes, it's something hard to tackle, right? Because texture is texture. If it's there, it's really hard to conceal and to blur. This, I feel, does not latch on to dry skin, or does not latch on to my dry skin, and the way it just melts into the skin but leaves behind such a fresh looking coverage that blurs, that covers, and does not look heavy is a huge achievement for this concealer, and I feel very much still considered a favorite in my collection. I might not use it as much because I'm using a bunch of concealers, but man, she's still a winner to me. Next up, the concealer that I bought after the Power Fabric, or that I decided to use extensively. And Kelsee also featured not the concealer per se, but the foundation from this line as her #1 foundation of all the foundations she tried in 2019. Let me hear it. Is that Shiseido, baby? I was not ready for this line. I was not ready for the efficacy, for the dazzling performance this concealer, the whole line, just bestowed upon me. They have two types of concealers. We have the liquid, the actual name is the Synchro Skin Self-Refreshing Concealer, 301 medium and 303 medium. I use 301 for under the eyes and 303 for the rest of my face. And we have the gel stick, and again, the actual name is the Synchro Skin Correcting Gel Stick Concealer. I have this sucker in 3 shades because I'm insane. I have one for under the eyes, I have one for all over. Let's see here, 302 for under the eyes, 304 all over, and 401 for the tan. The sleek design, easy to travel with. I have to say, it's been just such a pleasure using these products ever since I first bought them. Now, interestingly enough, the liquid concealer was specially formulated to be used all over the face, or on the areas you want more coverage on, you want more evenness of tone, smoothing of texture, and the gel stick was actually formulated for under the eyes specifically because it is a little more emollient than the liquid concealer from the Shiseido. I would say compared to the Power Fabric, it does have a similar finish. I would say it's soft matte, but more of a satin finish, a satin dry down. I would like to go in, however, I though would like to go in with both, right? Let's take a look at both. I'll go in with 302 first from the gel stick under the eye so you can see how that goes. And I just place it here. Yeah, just under the eyes. And then, well, actually, let me put a little dot there. I'll use my pat brush, but actually I found this texture is best blended out with a finger, because although I feel more emollient than most stick products, when it comes to this stick concealer, I feel is best applied with the finger. Now, just from this, I feel the Power Fabric offers up more coverage, as you can see, and the gel stick I think is for the makeup wearer who just wants a veil of coverage. And yes, it's on the lighter side, but some people just want that. They don't want any more than light coverage, and they feel when the shade is right and the undertone is right, they could do no wrong. It looks blurred. Any imperfections they're trying to conceal, that does the job. If you want to go in with the liquid 301 medium, if anything, if I were to combine these two, I would just take it right here, right under the eyes. And why don't we switch it up? This is my Zoeva 146 concealer brush. I think this is a little more yellow than the Power Fabric. So as you see, layering them is going to give you more coverage, but the Power Fabric is just is such a beautiful texture and dry down. I actually prefer the color for the Power Fabric more so than the Shiseido 301 medium, probably because I already applied the 302. But I also have 304, which I love to use as a spot treatment, right? If I just wanted to go over those areas of my face that I wanted to cover. But that's so crazy. Before I thought 304 was like my shade. I don't think it is anymore, friends. I feel that's pretty warm. You know what I'm saying? With that said, I'll go with 303 medium because this is like my actual, I think, a closer shade match to the rest of my face. For these quick, no makeup days, I slap on the 303. A little goes a long way, and I really appreciate this texture. For a concealer to be applied all over the skin, I think it leaves behind a beautiful skin-like finish. It blends effortlessly into the skin. And I've been applying my complexion products with brushes. I don't use sponges anymore. I haven't in a very long time. And I understand that sponges leave behind beautiful coverage, beautiful finishes, but I just like to punch it in. You know what I'm saying? And with the 401 tan, this I really loved as my contour type of a gig. This was one of the most beautifully smooth, easy to blend in types of like bronzer shades from a concealer formula. And I felt it left behind a beautiful tone. It warmed me up, but sculpted at the same time. A little went a long way. And I felt also the texture of the gel stick is just beautifully smooth and just buttery without feeling slick or greasy or looking shiny or heavy on the skin. And if you wanted, or what have you, you could take the 301 or the lightest concealer and use that as a highlighter if you wanted to add a little more contrast here. If you didn't want to use a shimmer highlight, you could use just a lighter color to create that. So this is my Shiseido side, and I have to say, friends, I think Shiseido is great for light to medium, but I think the liquid formula offers up a more of a medium coverage as opposed to the gel stick. The gel stick though is for, again, that makeup wearer that wants light coverage, just enough, leaves behind a skin-like finish that's lightweight, that does not look textured on the skin, that looks silky smooth. You can't go wrong. You simply can't go wrong with the Shiseido. I recommend this to any skin condition, to any skin type. It's fragrance free. I feel it plays well with other products. It's just a hit. it's a hit for me across the board. And yes, even if I have not been using them extensively like I did when I first purchased them, they are still very much in my heavy rotation and still, as you see, very highly recommended. Now, we already saw the magical power of the Power Fabric from Giorgio Armani. Let's reapply a little more of my Good Molecules. I don't buy a separate eye cream anymore. I just use my moisturizer. I feel it does the job just as well. Oh, look at that. Look at that difference. Ah! Hourglass. I was very excited about the Hourglass because the Vanish Liquid Foundation, although a fail to many, a hit to me, and I was thrilled to find out they were coming out with a concealer. So with that said, I first purchased 3 and I ended up purchasing another one. So yes, I have a total of 4. I couldn't help myself, friends. It was overkill. Yes, I know. In this concealer line, they also included corrector shades that was specifically for neutralizing dark circles. For instance, the shade I have, Topaz, is very much apricot in hue, and once you see when applied under the eyes, it's quick to conceal that darkness. I also have Sienna, which was also considered to be a corrector. I actually use this as like a highlight shade for my under eyes. And then Dune is a little yellow for me under the eyes, but I think if I went up, it would have looked too light. So this is the shade I use for my under eyes and really for all over my face. And Flax, I really didn't need to buy Flax. I didn't. I thought it would be a good under eye color, but it's a little on the olive side. So we'll see all these in action, so you could, you know, figure it out. The Hourglass, in terms of finish, I think is medium to full, around there somewhere. It dries down quickly. It's definitely soft matte, but without looking dry under the eyes. Although I would say maybe not ideal for a drier skin type that definitely suffers from that skin condition. I actually like to place the Hourglass concealer, the Airbrush Vanish, the Airbrush Vanish liquid concealer. Let's take a little bit of that right where I need that coverage. Now, I have to say I was quite impressed by this with this. The coverage of the Topaz shade, I think it successfully neutralizes my dark circles, and especially on those days where, you know, you try your best to get sleep, but sometimes it doesn't happen. And when you need to be photographed or you're gonna present or what have you, you just need to look like you got sleep, you need a corrector. And correctors are different from actual concealers because if you have darkness or severe discoloration, just covering it up with a beige, yellow, or whatever toned concealer will make your darkness maybe appear even more gray under that application because you didn't actually neutralize the color. With this, you're neutralizing the color, and the concealer you apply then afterwards, it would actually look a lot brighter and more even toned. And I find that to get the best finish from the Hourglass, I love to finger pat after everything has been applied. And it's just a really nice texture. I know it's not a favorite for a lot, or maybe it's not. I think maybe half and half this time around for this product. I like the texture. I like it a lot. I do feel though you can't go crazy with it. You can't go ham with it like the, you know, from lash line to nose. You can't do that with this. You could. I would say use a sponge because it will just be too much. You know what I'm saying? Now here's Dune under the eyes, and I'm going to pop this as so. I think it's an okay shade for me. I keep going back and forth with it. I want to slap that on top of Topaz, and I think it does a phenomenal job in covering my under eyes but looking like my skin. So that's not bad at all. And if you want, we can go in a little further. I'm going to go in with a couple of straps. I'm going to switch to my McGrath. Yeah, I think this is actually a really good shade for all over my face. I don't know why I was tripping earlier. Sure, it might be a little yellow, just a little bit, but I'll take it. But I think it's great coverage for all over the face because some people don't use concealer. What? Some people don't use foundation. They rely on their concealer for all over the face. And I actually really like the Hourglass as something I apply all over. Or you could use less. You could definitely spot treat and just spread out from there. Now Sienna, although a corrector, I actually like to use as like a very much inner under eye brightener. And this shade again has a peachiness to it that I feel is ideal to place right where you need extra brightness. And it's a lovely shade. It really just brightens up right under the lash line. And I use very little, as you see, because we applied, this is the third layer of concealer under the eyes. And I feel more than that would be overkill. And it dries then, I feel more soft matte. Well, here's the thing, friends. I think the Shiseido, although medium in coverage, just has more of a skin-like finish than the Hourglass. The Hourglass has beautiful coverage, but I feel if you use too much, it could look a little heavy. I think you have to be keen on making sure you don't use a whole lot, and whatever you do apply, you apply it very well and blend it nicely into the skin. But here again is the Shiseido, here is the Hourglass. I love the Hourglass. I don't use it enough, as I'm realizing now. I think it's really great for all over. And I wanted to give Flax a role in my life. So actually I've been using it as like a very, very soft contour. I mean, it's not going to show up a lot whatsoever, but just to give it something to do. This is a little too olive tone for all over the face, as I unfortunately discovered one day. But I think it gives a nice soft contour that you can layer another powder on and it won't be too much. So it's just a little bit of sculpt, just a little bit. And I'll pan you out so you can see the Shiseido has a lot more warmth from 401 Tan. And then with Flax from the Hourglass, it's a little softer. It's not as contrasting. But because of that, I feel you see that it's significantly lighter all around the rest of my face until it comes here to the hollows of my cheeks. But this looks a little more comprehensive because I think the colors are just closer together in hue. And this is not super warm on me, but sometimes I just like to do this if I wanted a soft, again, sculpted look. A little bit of a bronze touch without using a powder or too deep of a concealer on my skin tone. I would definitely consider Hourglass medium to full. So if you're not into that, if you have super dry skin and you're worried about the dry down in terms of it clinging too much of your skin texture, or you feel it will look too heavy, I don't know, I like it. Like, what have I been doing all this time? So with that said, we'll leave this on, and now we can go in with the, can you guess? What concealer did Alicia purchase after she purchased the Hourglass? Huh? I like Dune. Do you? I feel Dune is good. I feel Dune is good. This is the most unorganized, crazy roundup video ever. I am so sorry. And the Good Molecules moisturizer, shout out to them. I'm not scared of silicones, but this texture is really nice and great for these types of videos when applying and reapplying, because it dries down quickly and doesn't leave behind crazy slips, so you could get right into the makeup. All right, all right, all right. Oh, did we guess? Did we guess the next one? The Dior. I was quite surprised when I stepped foot into that store. First of all, I was expecting for this to have fragrance. When I saw that ingredient list and I took a sniff to make sure and discovered it didn't have fragrance, I was like, you got to be kidding me. The Dior foundations, everything, even their powder products, have fragrance. And I really was excited again for the size of the concealer. I mean, this was like $36 for 11 milliliters. That's a lot for luxury, I have to say. I was quite impressed by the price point and the size and the shade range and the overall just, let me just say, when I put this freaking concealer on, I had to do a double take and was like, wow, this is, I wasn't expecting this. This is marvelous. So I bought for like I did with the Hourglass. The all over skin shade is 3N. The under eye brightener 2W. Well, here's the thing. I thought 4N was going to be my all over shade in my original review video, which I have videos for, maybe not the Power Fabric, but for all the rest I got review videos for. I think the 4N was a little too warm for me, so I've been mixing it with the 3N and then 5N to contour with. Now this is a huge jump. I know that's probably my only critique, because I think the next one, or the one before 5N, was 4W, and 4W was nowhere near this shade. I was like, whoa, okay. Let's give you the 3N under the eyes. What can I say about this concealer? It's magnificent. It really brought me back to the Shiseido days, because I was using Shiseido and then I got distracted by the Hourglass and then I got into the Dior and I was like, oh my heavens. It's so creamy but whipped. It's like lightweight. It gives you the right amount of coverage. I would say this is a good, strong medium and can be built to full. And it's just an amazing, amazing texture. I mean, I was floored when I first applied this. As you notice, I'm using different brushes. I will list all these down below because I just wanted to also feature my favorite concealer brushes in this video. This is my Zoeva Face Shape in 110. I mean, are you kidding me? Okay, the reason why I might appear that this was the concealer I was most impressed by, because I had low expectations for it. I did. And when I applied it, I was impressed by the feel, the performance, the formula. It's so skin-like. And I would say this dries not down quickly like the Hourglass. I feel the Hourglass has a little more of a soft matte feel in terms of dry down, and the Dior is a little more skin-like in finish. It's more natural finish, which I think people overall prefer, especially when you're dealing with concealer, under eye dryness. You know, you want to stick to the texture that's not going to latch on to those bits, okay? 4N, the shade I relied on all over my face. But here's what we'll do. I'm going to dot 4N lightly around and then go in with 3N again, because I mixed these two together so it could be a better balance of tone. I'm actually going to whip out my Chikuhodo GS 02 and just punch those shades together. It's just so fast. It's so fast. And I think you can see here, you could probably see a little more warmth here going on from the Hourglass combination. And I feel this is a better match for me from the Dior. I feel 3N and 4N combined especially is much better for my overall complexion. I feel 3N might leave me a little washed out if used solo, but the 4N, it good. For 2W, 2W is what I would use for my under eye brightener, much like how I use Sienna from Hourglass. I just dot it here, right there. I'm gonna take that right under the eye. Now 2W I definitely didn't need. This was a splurge, just like 4N is. I didn't need another bronzing shade, but I was just so impressed. Now I think 2W is a little much. Like maybe if I was performing or I was being photographed and I needed that extra bit of brightness, I could apply 2W, but you can see how much that brought my under eye forward. It's like, voila! But it's good though. It's good. I could use this with the Hourglass, with the Shiseido, with a Power Fabric, with anything. With a bang. Now, this baby right here, we gotta be careful. We have to be careful. I just do 2 dots. That's all you need from this. I'm going in with Pat for this one. This brush, I just love it. Just gets right in there. You see that warmth? It shoots forward right away. I mean, it's not wasting any time, and I understand it's a very warm shade for me, but if you use little, I think it could be salvaged. And I bring it around the temple, a little bit on the forehead. I have to say, even though I like the complexion better on this side, I still love the tone of Dune all over my face. It's like a little more balancing on the Hourglass side. But the oh my god, the texture of this freaking Dior is just unbelievable. It's so smooth and they look similar in feel. I shouldn't have done that. I feel they look similar in terms of finish, but there's a little more plushiness to the Dior where you feel more of a soft matte dry down from the Hourglass. The Dior though, I mean the skin-like finish from this concealer is extraordinary. And something I also like to do, which I had demoed with the Shiseido, not only can I rely on the 2W shade to apply under the eyes for a little bit of brightening, but I could also do that same thing here, right on the tops of the cheekbones. This is a great highlighting technique as well. You don't necessarily have to use a highlight like a matte powder or even a shimmer powder to create highlight on the cheekbone. You could rely on a lighter concealer shade, and then I'm just working in a little bit of the 4M, whatever's left over on the brush, patting that down. And look how that just brightens up the whole cheekbone. So what do we think? We got the Hourglass side. It's giving me a little more warmth overall. And the Dior side, I feel is a little more to my actual skin tone, but you see that the bronzing shade is a little more red, a little more warm than the Flax shade. That's a little more maybe like an olive golden color. Both are phenomenal. I really love both, and it really is up to you. I would say if you're trying to decide between Hourglass and Dior, if you're a drier skin type, go with the Dior. You can't go wrong either way. If either, I think it all comes down to then which line best fits your skin tone, right? Because ultimately, if you love the finish and texture of both, it all comes down to which is going to be your best shade match. Took off the Hourglass side, still had the Dior on, and what is next? The latest addition to my concealer collection from McGrath. Her highly anticipated Skin Fetish Sublime Perfection Concealer, which I also bought 4 of. Now, upon using this for the first time, I immediately thought of the Hourglass. I thought Pat's concealer offered up a similar soft matte finish that still looked natural. It didn't look drying on the skin. But it's going to be interesting to put them head to head because between the Dior, Shiseido, and the Pat, because I love the Hourglass too. Don't get me wrong, I love the Hourglass. But those three, it's so hard to pick my number one. I don't know. I originally thought LM14 would be a good under eye shade, but I came to find out that LM13 I thought was a little more brightening. So I'll go in with LM14. This concealer definitely a little goes a long way. Like, do not go ham with this concealer. I wouldn't anyway. Like, look at the freaking coverage, man. And I feel it's very skin-like in finish. I think this to be medium to full. I would consider this medium to full, much like the Hourglass concealer. The Dior I would consider more like a strong medium, as I do the Shiseido. Well, the Shiseido liquid medium, the gel stick light to medium. So the LM14 I think is great for an everyday shade if I'm not looking to overly brighten up the under eye. But if I want a tinge more contrast, the LM13 I feel is a great addition just to add a dot of, like just a little, it's definitely not as light as the Dior 2W, but I feel it's just enough to give me that brightness without looking too out of hand. And as you see, I mean, I just put on the lightest just of application just to give me a little more boost here. And here you can see the finish of both a little bit. It's so hard to tell. The Dior, I think the 2W is not as yellow as the LM13. Is a little more, it's a little more light. I feel because of that, this side looks a little more natural. And this side you can see there's like significant significantly more brightness under the eye. For my all over shade, I grabbed M16, which is also my foundation shade. Now, she formulated these to be, I think, slightly lighter than your foundation shade. So if you could not try these in person, that you're able to successfully order online and still have a good match. Don't know if that worked, friends. Let me know down below. I'm taking my Chikuhodo GSN again. I'm just punching that in. I love the coverage of the pat. I think it's like skin-like, but it covers at the same time, and it does it so quickly, and it's still very lightweight in feel. I would say though, I definitely would say that the Dior has a little more creaminess to it. I think, dare I say, it blends in a little faster than the pat. The pat blends in fast, as you see, but again, the Dior just has a little bit of, if I were to do an interpretive dance, the pat is like this, the Dior is like this. It got a little extra curve in there. Really? So that's how the pat looks. Again, I raved about this concealer in my original review, and also when I included it in my favorites of the month. Going in now with MD22, excuse me. I was going between a lot of shades in the MD category for my contour, and I really liked this where it's neutral undertone. I actually much prefer it, this shade, than to the 5N from Dior, but it's okay. Taking my Wayne Goss 01 foundation brush found in his Anniversary 1 set. I actually like this brush a lot too, just to nudge in the hollows of the cheeks. And I think it just beautifully blends in anything I wish to apply here to give a little more sculpt. Yeah, I just much prefer this shade. It's like the 5N is so warm on me. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. I make it work. I could always combine the shades, you know. I mean, I could probably combine that with Flax because I got all of them. I also hit some here on the jawline. And like we've been doing, I could apply the lighter shade. In this case, it's the LM13 to the highest points of the face. And just apply that right here to add a little more highlight. Yeah, and then I go back in, no additional product, but using the brush I applied the contour with to just blur those edges between the highlight and the contour shade. I look really bright on this side, and I know I'm sitting in front of my window. It looks a little bright, but I much prefer the overall tone that the M16 gives me, and I feel this shade is like a happy medium between what the Dior is giving me now and what the Hourglass was giving me. Is the Hourglass was probably like a little too yellow for my overall complexion. And I actually would think this sits very closely to Shiseido's 303 medium. It's just so crazy when you see these shades together on a swatch, and then when you apply them on your skin, you're like, oh, it kind of works out, doesn't it? So I feel the pat, you see how light the pat is, but when I apply the Shiseido, it doesn't look like it's going to be that deep, right? That warm on me, but it works out. And the feel of the pat when it dries down, I will say I would consider Hourglass and the pat concealer to be on par in terms of coverage and finish. I do feel the pat feels a little more lightweight on the skin, despite their similar characteristics. I do feel that indeed. I felt like I had a little more makeup on when I applied the Hourglass, and that could be due to the fact that maybe I applied more, right? Absolutely. It's just so nice. This texture is just so nice. But the Dior is unbelievable. And again, I can combine all these shades. I could get the best of both shades. I could put both of them together, but I just wanted to do them side by side. You're going the wrong way. So you can see any of the color differences. Now again, you can see there's a little more yellow here that occurs in the pat, and this is a little more light. This is a little more neutral from MD22. This is a little more red, and of course I could always, you know, try to blend that out better. But the skin, the finish left behind is just what I'm most impressed with. And the Dior as well. The Dior is just beautifully creamy, so natural and finish. I mean, the texture is sublime. And I know the sublime is in the sublime, but the sublime lives here too on the Dior, let me tell you. I also like the coverage a little bit better. Now, if you don't know, I just realized I did showdowns with these concealers. I wore one on each side for like 8 hours, and I do check-ins. I will leave that playlist down below and up above if you want to check those videos out. I think it comes down to personal preference, the color match, which color match is best, which texture is going to be best for your skin type. Ultimately, I love them all. But you're like, Alicia, if you had to pick your favorite, as much as I prefer the texture of the Dior, I much prefer the staying power and the shade match from Pat. Now, it could very well be I need to choose something else from the Dior for my shade match, right? They have a wide range, as they should, of concealer shades with different undertones, and sometimes with lighting, with retail lighting, it's hard to tell which is best for you at the time of buying. And right now, I much prefer how the M16 looks on me all over. It doesn't wash me out, or it doesn't make me too warm. Whereas even though I combined the 3N and the 4N, I could have used more 4N. I feel I look very light here in this area. And again, I love the creamy texture. I love the beautiful natural skin-like finish of the Dior, but the staying power of the Pat McGrath concealer and just the texture, it's like my skin elevated. Absolutely. It's hard. The Dior and the Pat is head to head. As much as I love the Shiseido too, I feel the same. I feel Pat McGrath has a little more staying power than the Shiseido, but the Shiseido I think is a better match for me overall, although I'm just comparing Pat McGrath and Dior now. It's hard, friends, but yes, I think Pat is my favorite out of all the concealers, but we are splitting hairs, okay? We are splitting hairs. I have a normal to dry skin type right now. My skin's doing well enough that I'm not undergoing any crazy texture, any dry patches. I don't have eczema, I don't have rosacea, I don't have any skin conditions that can definitely influence my decision in terms of choosing the best concealer. But you definitely have to, right? And that's why I wanted to do a demo on top of a roundup style video, because I wanted to present my experience that I had with each concealer and hypothetically present the one that will be best for the drier skin type or the oilier. For instance, I feel the Hourglass might be more suitable for normal to oily because it has just a slightly more dry or just drier dry down. The Pat concealer may be more normal, and then the Dior normal to dry. The Shiseido I will place normal as well. I think oily skin types can get away with the liquid formula, but the drier skin types I think will be best for the gel stick formula. And the Power Fabric, I would say normal. I think you could take Power Fabric normal to oily or normal to dry. Combination, of course, would be great for the Hourglass, would be great for Shiseido, would be great for Pat. I think probably Pat will be best suitable for the T-zone, as it has, I think, a better staying power than the Dior. And the Dior you will probably apply on the outer perimeters of your face, on those drier portions of your skin. Hopefully this video helped, friends, in terms of you trying to decide which concealer to use, or maybe you just having fun seeing these concealers go head to head with one another in terms of texture and shade. Let me know what your favorite concealer is down below, what you have been loving, and until then, that is a wrap. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this video helped, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and maybe consider subscribing to my channel. And until then, I'll see you on here again with another review, tutorial, product roundup, get ready with me, Wednesday or Friday night chit chat. Take care, and I'll see you again soon.